Alright, here we go with another Mortal Kombat lore Q&A episode. This is the third episode in the series, so if you haven't seen the other two, go ahead and check those out to make sure you're up to date with what I have answered. Just a quick heads up, I know I said I was going to do 15 questions per episode, but for reasons I explained in a post I made on the community tab, I'm going to be sticking with 5. If you want to know why, check out my latest statement on the community tab on my channel since I don't want to spend too much time on the intro. Remember, if you want to have a question of yours answered in a future episode, simply go ahead and leave a comment on this video. Timestamps are in the description and comments for you mobile users, so let's get right into the first question today, which comes from Nobody Important, who asks, why does Sonya have some kind of power? What is that pink dust or whatever that she uses for her X-ray in MKX? How does she do her classic fatality? Okay, so Sonya over the years has been a little wishy-washy on whether or not she has supernatural powers. Like, how could she do something like the Kiss of Death or the regular kiss that she does in her gameplay when we all have come to understand that she is just a normal human being? She's a soldier. She's not a descendant of some god or some sort of daughter of a supernatural being. No, she is just a human from the US Special Forces. So how can she possibly have these powers that we've come to see? Well, the real canon answer is that there isn't a canon explanation as to why she has some sort of supernatural ability. Like, literally, I don't believe it says anywhere that explains why Sonya can do things like the Kiss of Death. However, that doesn't stop the power of theories, and I first heard the theory from Razor on the Nethercast when I was listening to one of the last episodes, and the theory goes that she had some sort of training with Liu Kang. Think about that. When Sonya returns in Mortal Kombat 3, because she was absent in Mortal Kombat 2, she can now do a bicycle kick, and when she does the Kiss of Death, it's based around fire. Liu Kang's firepower comes from Chi, so it is possible that maybe Sonya trained with Liu Kang to learn how to tap into her inner Chi. And what she gained from it was learning how to do a variation of the bicycle kick, which we all know that comes from Liu Kang. It's Liu Kang's signature move, and she is able to summon fire with her Kiss of Death. So that's what I'd like to believe. It isn't written in canon that this happened, but I would like to believe this is how she is able to do supernatural things. Thank you for the question, by the way. I'm sorry I really couldn't give you a canon answer, but I did want to share that theory around because it all seems reasonable to me. The next question we have comes from Zane Gerard, or Gerard, who asks, Edenians are known to have very long lifespans. Do you think it is natural, or do they go through something to have a long lifespan? Example, perform a ritual or eat a sacred food. Well, even though those are interesting solutions to your question, neither of them are correct. The real answer is that the entire Edenian race are descendants of the gods, which means they have just a little bit of god blood in them, and because of that, they can live as long as they can. We know Katana is 10,000 years old, and probably so is Jade and Tanya. This is another one of those little details that I wouldn't expect a lot of people to know about, because it's one of those little nuggets of information in a bio from Armageddon. As we know, Armageddon does not have the bios for their characters in the game. They are on a website which is no longer up, but other MK sites still managed to get it. This one's mentioned in Rain's Armageddon bio, which I can't show a picture of obviously, but now you know that the Edenians are descendants of the gods, which gives them the capability of living for a great amount of time. Thank you for the question, Zane. Glad to have got you to learn something new. On to the next question from Abdullah Edris, who asks, do you think that the comics are canon? Well, thank you for the question, Abdullah, and I would like to believe that the comics are semi-canon. Now, when something is semi-canon, in this instance, the MKX comics, that means that some parts of the comic are in line with the official story of this new timeline, and some aren't. Like, it's canon when it needs to be canon, and I believe it has to be semi-canon. It can't possibly be fully canon. So I remember many people explaining, or questioning, why Goro isn't in the story mode of MKX, yet he was included on the roster at launch. I mean, he was DLC, but he was still available to play when the game launched. Well, his bio actually explains why not only him, but why the entire Shokan race is not in the game. It states that the Shokan refused to take sides in the Outworld Civil War and were thus outcast. But the comic shows that the Shokan were heavily involved in the Civil War. So I personally would like to believe the games on this one because those are what matter the most. That's not to say that I don't believe anything in the comic is canon. Obviously, the Reiko Accords are referenced in the game and that came from the comic. But to me, that is another instance of the comic being canon when it wants to be. And now that Sean Kittleson is the writer for the games and he was the writer for the comics, he ultimately gets to decide what is canon and what's not. So that's my whole take on the discussion of whether or not the comics are canon. I know it's a whole big confusion, and my best attempt to try to make it clear for you guys is that the comics are semi-canon. This next question we have comes from Muhammad Al-Harbi, or Al-Harbi. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name, I'm pretty sure I did. Anyways, he asks, explain why can't anyone, including the Elder Gods, destroy Shinnok's amulet? Thank you. Well, thank you for the question, Muhammad, and I know this is a pretty big question, and I too questioned it when I first played the story of MKX, since it's another case of them not explaining big things like this. Now, granted, not everything needs to be explained. Sometimes it's best to leave them unexplained, and sometimes you just have to know why things are the way they are, and to me, I think this is best if it's left unexplained. Now, that's not to say I won't answer your question, but I'm saying there are a lot of things that aren't explained, and it's perfectly fine because of it. Anyways, Shinnok's amulet was made by Shinnok himself. Shinnok, as we know, is a former Elder God. He was a Elder God. So it must have taken the power of an Elder God and an Elder God only to make that amulet. So that would mean that the amulet is as strong as an Elder God, and Elder Gods, as we know, cannot die. So in the amulet's case, the amulet can't be destroyed. Now, this is just a thought based on what we know is fact. This hasn't been flat out said in the games. I'm just coming up with a solution based on what we already know and what's kind of implied from the story. I hope I answered your question well, Muhammad. It's a very good one to ask. Now on to our final question for today, comes from the fourth snake, who asks, did Scorpion always release his spear from his hand, or was it an external weapon? You'd often see him holding it in his hand in the official art. There's definitely art from Deadly Alliance of his spear coming from his palm, but the movie may have had some influence there. Well, thank you for the question, Snake. By the way, I love your channel and I love your coverage on the Mortal Kombat franchise. Great channel. Go check them out if you haven't seen them already. Anyways, as for your question, as far as I'm concerned, Scorpion's spear was an external weapon, and it's always been an external weapon because, as you can see in Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon, his spear is always attached to his belt, but in the newer games, it's not attached to his belt, and it sort of comes out of nowhere. So I think that might be the developers implying that it's a supernatural power, but then again, you had 3 games saying that it's not, so which is it, you know? I guess to answer your question, in the new timeline it's a supernatural power, I guess, and it makes sense if it was a supernatural power, even though there's plenty of games saying that it's an external weapon. That's pretty much the best answer I can give you. And as for the Deadly Alliance art you were talking about, where the spear is coming from his palm, I think you're right. It was just a movie reference, and it was just there to look cool and nothing more than that, because in the same game, you have the spear attached to his belt like an external weapon. Like I said, nothing more than just to look cool. With all that being said, we have come to the end of the video. Thank you all so much for the continued support on this series. It's been doing very well and better than I expected, and I just love it, guys. I can't thank you all enough. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Mortal Kombat content to come. I'll see you all in the next video.